Hi, my name is Kay Meyer. I like all things reading, writing, and creepy. And welcome to my mid-year freakout tag. This is my third year doing it. I always get my questions from with Cindy. Not sure who started this tag, but if you really want to know, you can look that up yourself. Number 1, the best book I've read so far. I actually have a tie this year. I have one adult and one young adult book. When the Bones Sing by Ginny Sain. This is a YA paranormal romance, sort of. I will read everything she writes, and this by far is my favorite book I've read by her. And then the best adult novel that I've read so far this year is My Darling Dreadful Thing by Johanna van Veen, I think is how you say her name. Perfect lesbian, creepy, gothic, ghostly thing. Also with some very creepy saint statues. I had no idea that was going to be in here, but honestly, that's the part I think about the most, even after reading this. And it's been months, because I read this at the beginning of the year. And it's still, I'm still thinking about those statues. Number 2 is the best sequel I've read so far this year. And that has to be virulence. Okay, the title is a scientific word, and I keep saying it wrong, and spelling it wrong, and reading it wrong in my mind, but it's Virulence by Toni Duarte. This is book 2 in the Bioluminescence trilogy. Oh my gosh, if you like The Walking Dead or The Last of Us, it's very much in that realm of dystopian vibes. There's also like a fungus that kind of takes over. And I just love these characters. It's an ensemble cast, so multi-POV, and it fits right in that like new adult category. Like it's very good. Toni is a indie author. I got a chance to read an arc of the first one, Bioluminescence, loved it so much. Got a chance to read Virulence as an arc as well. Could not put it down, honestly, and now I'm just here waiting for book 3. I'll be patient, but also, like, good anticipation. Like, it's fun to have something to be waiting for sometimes. Number 3 is the best new release that I've read so far in 2025. This, hands down, is They Bloom at Night. This is a young adult horror novel that has visceral, like, gross out horror, but also it kind of fits like ecosystem wise swamp and ocean, which is really interesting. And there's like kind of a mix of the two, and the horror creature comes from the water, and it's really cool how it travels. I have never read anything like it with this kind of horror big baddie. Highly recommend. One of my favorite things about the author is that they also wrote She Is a Haunting, and now that I've read 2 of their books, I can definitely say this author knows how to write a midpoint conflict that is scarier and more intense than a lot of like final ending climax scenes, like fight scenes I've read in other horror novels. Like this author knows what they're doing. And I think this is only their second book, at least the second one that I've read by them. So definitely one that I'm keeping an eye on. Number 4 is new releases that came out so far this year that I have my eye on. They're on my to-read pile that is always growing, even though I'm reading from it, I swear. It's just one of those things. And that is, I have 2 that I wanted to share. That is Kill Creatures by Rory Power. I really like this author. I really enjoyed Wilder Girls by this author, and there's another one, Burn Our Bodies Down, something like that, that has like some really gross horror things. Like that one, there's like a tooth and a peach, and it's just like weird, but like really cool. So I'm really excited for her new book, Kill Creatures. And can shift over from the creepiness to adult romance. I don't read a lot of that, but every once in a while there is an adult romance author that I just really fall in love with, and I will read everything they write. And for me, right now, is Lana Ferguson. Her books are like silly goofy, but also really fun, like straight romance that are like kind of spicy. And I don't know, they're very tropey, but as someone who does not read a lot of like straight adult romance, I really enjoy hers. It's just, she makes me laugh, and I feel like she doesn't take herself too seriously, and honestly, the love interests, like the men, are not super toxic, like in a lot of other straight romances that I've tried to read or I've heard about online that people complain about, that just kind of bug. So, but her new one, Overruled, is about two lawyers, and I just like her range. Everyone is a different, like, kind of vibe. I read one where it was like an OnlyFans person who became a nanny. She has one with like alpha werewolves that are doctors, and just like kind of pairing tropes that kind of mixing it up a little, even though like we're still in the bubble of straight romance. I do feel like she's pretty good at having side characters that are diverse, with like race and like sexuality and stuff. Like it's white straight romance with a little something else in the surrounding world. Question 5, the biggest disappointment of books I read. And this was kind of hard to pick one that was the biggest disappointment, because I honestly read quite a few that I didn't really like this year. I haven't DNF'd anything, but there was a lot that were just kind of like 1 star, 2 star, that I was kind of like, this wasn't that good. Like, there was things I had issues with. So the one that was the biggest disappointment for me, which honestly is not, it's not a bad book, it just was disappointing, is Alice Isn't Dead by Joseph Fink. If you like the podcast, Alice Isn't Dead, I don't know if you would like this book. My favorite part of the podcast is when the main character kind of goes around to these strange little towns, very Twilight Zone-esque, and all sorts of random things that are unsettling or creepy happen to her. And it's always kind of one of those like, is this really happening? Is this a glitch in the Matrix? Are people seeing what I'm seeing? And they kind of got rid of that for the book to focus on the overarching plot, which, turning it into a book, I guess that makes more sense, but that did mean that they took my favorite part of the podcast and kind of got rid of that almost entirely. And then it was just like the overarching plot of the 3 seasons of the podcast all into one. And I felt like I didn't get to know the characters as much, and it wasn't like as compelling, or like I didn't feel as scared, or the bad guys didn't feel like they were actually like killing as many people or whatever. Like, it didn't feel like the same level of stakes. Like in the podcast, it's like drawn out 3 seasons. I felt like the stakes were higher because there's all these little instances of like world building where this like world is not safe, really weird, and honestly like, I don't know, very unsettling, but in like a fun way to listen to. And then the book was just kind of like kept a lot of that out of it. And then it was like, then the bad guys didn't feel like they were doing as much bad things. I hope that makes sense. Question 6. What book was the biggest surprise this year? I have 2 for this one, starting off with Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I seriously waited until 2025 to read this because I didn't know if I was going to like it. I did not know if I was going to like it because I really liked John Green as a teenager, and I wasn't sure if now that I'm an adult, if I was still going to like that kind of style and if it was going to hold up. And I have not reread any of his books since I was a teenager, so I was kind of like fearful of bursting that bubble, of liking his writing style. And I should not have been worried because I did really like Trolls All the Way Down. I was also nervous to read it and did not read it for a while after it came out because the main character has OCD. I also have OCD, and honestly, I have not gone out of my way to find books with characters that have OCD that aren't nonfiction. I've read a few memoirs and stuff in the past couple of years, but when I was a kid, I read a couple books that had characters with OCD that were very stereotyped, counting everything, cleaning everything, and in a way that's oh, this is the mainstream just kind of stereotypes of OCD. That is not really how my OCD presents. I don't count things. I'm not a numbers person to begin with. I like words. Hence all the talking about books. John Green's character and I do not share the same compulsions or obsessions, but the way he described and talked about her having OCD felt familiar, and I did not know that I had OCD as a teenager, and I just really enjoyed this portrayal of it. It's honestly the first fictional character with OCD that I can relate to, which is just really nice, because last year I read a book where it was for teens too, and the author did not explicitly say hey, my main character has OCD, but having it myself, I noticed a lot of the symptoms and thought patterns of OCD, and that book really had some things that I thought were damaging messaging about the girl's brain being broken, but then at the same time her OCD was a magical superpower that helped her survive this thriller situation. So coming off of that, where that was the last fictional book I read with a character that I felt had OCD, I was I'm gonna hold off. I need a minute from that. But then finally getting to John Green's book, I was okay, I'm here for it, I'm down. I really liked how this bulk of the story, though, focused more on her relationships and how she wasn't showing up for people in her life because she was having a lot of issues with her OCD and it was kind of taking her over. I did have to take a few more days to read the book than I normally would read one, just because when I was reading it, I started having issues myself, but that was unrelated to reading the book. It was just oh, my OCD's kicking in today, let me not read this book about it. Just kind of being aware of my own triggers and stuff like that. All that being said, the second biggest surprise for me was an adult book called The History of Wild Places. This is fictional. It sounds like it's going to be nonfiction. It is not. It is a really slow burn kind of thriller. I thought, okay, spoiler, my explanation for why this is going to be a biggest surprise is going to be a spoiler, so just be aware. So I thought this was going to have a supernatural element. It does not. It was all just real people in a cult. So still terrifying, honestly. I think that is more scary than it being a supernatural thing. And the biggest surprise, okay, this is the most spoileriest part. The main character, or well, one of them, because there's 3. My favorite main character was blind, okay? Turns out she's not actually blind, and it was just part of the brainwashing of the cult, because she was in love with the cult leader. And they grew up together, and he literally brainwashed her into thinking she was blind since she was a teenager, and made her think that she had a degenerative, eye disease. It was a really good twist. I did not see that coming at all. And I really liked that he got what was coming to him. But yeah, it was I really did not see that coming. And I can usually guess a lot of plot twists. I did not see that one. I kind of guessed that after a while it wasn't going to be a supernatural thing. But I did not think that her being blind was going to be part of the brainwashing. So that was wild, like the title suggests. Okay, spoilers over. Number 7, who is a new favorite author you've read this year? I have to say, Tiffany D. Jackson. I can't believe that I have not read her books before. I mean, I can, because I know I've had them on my to-read list for years now, but I finally got to it, and I read her book, White Smoke, which is a YA horror book. Also, one of those things where it's like you think the scary thing in the horror book is gonna be one thing, and then completely flips it on its head and is something else. I'll say that much. Because it is so good, I don't want to spoil it for you. Like, that one is really good if you don't know the twist going into it. I also read her book, The Weight of Blood. This is a Carrie retelling, and one thing to know about me is I love Carrie. I love all things Carrie. I did one of my big papers in my film class in college on like the different adaptations of Carrie, because we also read the book. And this is probably my favorite modern telling of Carrie. It just kind of blew me away. Like, it was so good. I read the book, I watched the movie from the 70s, I've listened to the musical, and I have watched the movie from, I believe, 2013 with Chloe Grace Moretz. And I believe there's one from the early 2000s that I have not seen. But Tiffany's version brought in a whole new layer of racism in America, and honestly, I think it was very well done, and is a take that I did not expect, by having Carrie be biracial and having to pass as white because her dad is a racist piece of shit. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I will definitely read more from her. I have Mondays Not Coming, I think it's called, on my holds list from the library. A new favorite adult author of mine is T. Kingfisher. So, last year, I read her book, What Moves the Dead. And I had been waiting to read the sequel till I could get a physical copy, but I couldn't wait anymore, so I just borrowed it from the library. I love this take on the fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, and I loved the idea of bringing the main character from this into another kind of like gothic world, another classic literature inspired story. So I already knew I was gonna like the sequel. I did like it a lot, but I waited until I read her book, A House with Good Bones, to fully decide, like, yes, this is gonna be a new favorite author. And that one was really cool, like a very different take on a haunted house. Also very gross, with little creatures living under the house that are like her relatives. I don't know. It was really, I really liked how it was done, and it was gross, but different. Question number 8 is supposed to be my new book crush. That didn't happen, y'all. So I'm just gonna say my new favorite character, which is Oliver from Virulence. Oliver from Virulence in the Bioluminescence trilogy by Toni Duarte. Oliver was not a POV character in book 1, and his was added in the sequel. I love him so much. The author is neurodivergent herself, and I feel like she did a really good job at portraying Oliver as an autistic character. I just really like this series because it's really fun seeing more diverse dystopian apocalyptic stuff. I also haven't read any of that in a while, and hers is just really refreshing and addictive. But I think about these characters, like, it feels like you're watching an episode of like The Walking Dead, and I love that because that is one of my favorite shows. And I think it's cool when books feel like an episode of TV, which sounds weird, but it has to do with like the structure, I think, and like keeping things pacey and stuff keeps happening, which I feel like works best in, like, this is a sci-fi dystopian apocalyptic setting, but also sometimes I think that works really well in fantasy too, because I don't have time to read giant books anymore. And I kind of get a little bored sometimes now with like more flowery prose. I had to read so much of that in school, y'all. Like, ever since I graduated from college, I have been leaning more towards books that have been published recently. And it's just been a different pace. It's a different set of expectations. And I'm not gonna go so far to say that like, oh, my attention span has changed because of TikTok. Like, no. I have too much focus. We established this with the OCD. I don't know. If you know, you know. So I really like Oliver, and I really just like the addition of his point of view. I think it really added to the sequel, and especially because the main characters were apart from each other at certain points, and they come back, and then are apart again, and you don't know what's going to happen. But he's definitely a new favorite character. Question number 9 is books that made me cry. And honestly, there was only one, and that is The Dark We Know. This book. It's a young adult horror novel that kind of explores what happened to a broken friend group. The creature / antagonist in this is something very unique that I personally had not read before, and it was kind of an amalgamation of a couple things that I think worked really well together. I'm currently writing a young adult horror with a creature as the main antagonist, so I put a lot of books with that similar kind of like antagonist on my TBR. So I've been going through, so that's why a lot of these books so far have been like young adult horror, because I've been writing, so I've been reading a lot to see like, oh, what are other people doing, what are like the tropes and stuff, and what are the expectations, what do I not want to do from ones I don't like. But anyway, this one, The Dark We Know, it's that level of horror, but there's also like a deeper level of honestly just being realistic with mental health and how stuff is traumatizing. And definitely read the content warnings in the book or on the author's website for this one. There are some trigger warnings you might want to be aware of. It was creepy but also really sad, and I cried near the end because it was just so poignant, and like what they did to solve the issue, and kind of like the way they were able to overcome the thing that was terrorizing the town, and bring it peace as well as the people there, was very well done. And then an honorable mention for a book that made me cry is a book that did not make me cry because I was reading it at work, but I almost cried reading this. I don't think I need to say anything else about that because literally everybody else has cried to this. And that brings me to question number 10, what books made me happy? And this was also a little tricky because I didn't read a lot of like fluffy feel-good. I didn't really read much of anything fluffy or like feel-good. I read a lot of horror or books that weren't horror but were just disappointing. Like, I didn't have any nonfiction books that I actually really liked from... I don't think no, that's a lie. I think I had 2 or 3 4-star nonfiction books, but none that were like, yeah, this needs to make the mid-year Freakout. You know what I mean? I definitely read mostly fiction, but ever since 2023, when I made it like a reading goal that year to read 1 nonfiction book a month, I've been trying to just read more of that, just because there are some topics that I realized, hey, I do like learning about this. I forgot I liked that, just because getting burnt out with reading nonfiction for school, you know, it happens. So my book that made me happy is a little bit of a weird choice, but that is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I did not read that back when it came out in 2020 because I was like, I don't care about President Snow. I don't want to read his backstory. What? Why would you make a book about that character? But then I watched the movie and ate my words, and I think the movie's really cool, and it made me really want to read the book, especially when Sunrise on the Reaping was coming out. I was like, I have to read this other prequel first. So I like read it right before I read Sunrise on the Reaping. So it was a fun, like, back to my like early teen years of like reading the Hunger Games for the first time, and it just had that like nostalgia, but like with a new story and some new characters, but also seeing a lot of old ones. And guys, the President Snow as a teenager is so down bad for Lucy Gray in the book. Like, it was cracking me up. I was also reading this one at work because I'm in a customer service kind of job, so sometimes when it's slow, I'm just waiting for people to approach me with their problems, so I get a little bit of a downtime. And I didn't write this down, so it's not like an exact quote or anything, but there's a part where President Snow is talking about Dean Highbottom. No. Why am I getting that name? Casca Highbottom? Yeah, that's his name. Anyway, President Snow is like, he calls that guy evil incarnate, and he's like, what does evil incarnate want with my girlfriend, aka Lucy Gray? And it was really fun reading a new Hunger Games book, and I wish I had read it sooner because I loved it. Question number 11 is, what's the most beautiful book you've bought? And I've kind of put myself on a book buying hold this year. There were a few books that I ordered in 2024 that arrived in 2025. That I did Cassandra Clare's Kickstarter, and then also like a couple pre-orders. So I don't really want to count those because I technically bought them last year. And the couple that I've bought for myself this year, I wouldn't say they're like outstandingly beautiful or anything. So I'm gonna say this one that I got free for signing up for my summer reading club at the library, because I really like these colors, and I like that you can see their faces in like the sky, and then like the town is like burning, and I really like this one. It's a paperback, so nothing fancy, no sprayed edges or anything, but I really like the art style and the colors, and it like caught my eye immediately when I saw it on the shelf for the free ones you can choose from. So we'll do this. I haven't read it yet, so another one on my to read shelf. And finally, the last question is, what is on your TBR shelf for the second half of the year? And it's going to be the sequel that's coming out to A Tempest of Tea, which is titled A Steeping of Blood. And I read this one earlier this year. It has Six of Crows vibes, but replaced the magic with vampires, which honestly I find a little more interesting. So I am excited for the sequel to come out. And then these are two books that I bought last year and just have not read yet. I really need to read The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw. I have not read any of Sarah Kanon's books yet, but I really enjoy both of her YouTube channels, and I've taken 2 of her classes that she has, one on like writing and another one on like planning. And yeah, this one is a like paranormal thriller kind of, that's for young adults. I bought it with her like pre-order stuff, so I got some goodies, stickers, and a bookmark, and she also signed it for me, and she was very nice. This one came really late because the mail is stupid where I live or something like that, like I don't know, but she also signed it, and she wrote my name, and she sent it to me again even though the first one didn't come. She did not have to do that. So I'm really excited to read this one. And I also really need to read this, Don't Let the Forest In. All I needed to know about this book was that it was young adult horror and had an autistic main character. And I was like, sign me up. Oh, and it was queer. So like 3 of my favorite things: horror, neurodiversity, and queer characters. I just have had a really hard time getting into reading physical books this year. Like, I've really been hitting Libby heavy with audiobooks and ebooks. I think it's because I really haven't been feeling like carrying these around, which is honestly like very uncharacteristic of me, if you know me in real life. But I've had so many other things in my bag. I've had a lot of stuff going on this year. So I have been reading in smaller doses, which is a lot easier when I can just do that on my phone. Or I can binge listen to hours and hours of audiobooks on 2.5 times speed while I'm doing chores. So that's kind of how I've been reading lately. But yeah, let me know what your favorite books have been so far this year. Have you had any duds that really disappointed you? I'm hoping to post a little more on YouTube instead of TikTok this year. I really needed a break the first half of the year, so I've been a little MIA, but I have been keeping up with my newsletter on Substack. It's called Creepy Club. Sign up if you want to see all my monthly favorite creepy content that I've been consuming. Also some writing updates and some publishing updates. I have one short story that's been published so far, and I am working on a young adult sapphic horror novel that I will be self-publishing, so all the news about that and when it's coming out and everything will be released there first. It's not ready yet, but it's getting close. So, have a good day, stay creepy, and keep reading.